Hello, and welcome to Atlantic Debrief, the Atlantic Council Europe Center's internet show and podcast, where we break down the most pressing issues impacting transatlantic relations. My name is Andy Bernard. I am a non-resident senior fellow with the Atlantic Council's Europe Center, and I'm honored to be joined from Lisbon by Mr. David Diniz. And we are going to talk for a few minutes about the recent Portuguese presidential election. David, thank you for joining us. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you. It's a
By
pleasure.
way of introduction, David is the deputy editor of the leading Portuguese newspaper Expresso. He's a longtime journalist in the Portuguese environment with 20 plus years of experience and is a political junkie, as I understand. So we are going to benefit from his knowledge. Before we dive into the details, David, for our viewers, can you just give us a perspective of what the role of the Portuguese president is based off the Constitution, head of state, obviously, but there are some enumerated powers, aren't there?
Yeah, well, let me see if I can explain this in a simple manner. So Portugal has a semi-presidential system. It's not as simple as the US, but similar to what happens in France or in Poland or Hungary. So here, the president is the head of state, but does not have executive power. He actually controls the government, politically speaking, meets with the prime minister every week, can veto laws, can deliver a message to the parliament, and just in extreme circumstances, he can dissolve the parliament and call for new elections. But his greatest power is actually his word influencing the course of events.
Oh, great. And technically speaking, he's also the supreme commander of the armed forces, right? Even though
Yes,
the
he has.
executive, runs the armed forces.
Yes, and he has some powers on foreign affairs. So even on defense or foreign affairs, the president is someone that the government should speak with.
Great. So Antonio José Seguro will be your next president,
Yes.
and we'll dive into that. But holistically, through the presidential cycle, as an outsider, as a Portugal watcher or Europe watcher, this seemed like a non-standard election season based
Absolutely.
off of modern democratic Portugal history since the Carnation Revolution. Do you agree with that? And what are some of your perspectives on the historical significance of these past couple weeks?
Yes, absolutely. This is our 11th presidential election since the revolution back in 1974. And what makes this presidential election different is if we not usually during the latest 10th have had elections which oppose someone on the right, central right, and the central left. That's what have had since the revolution. On this election, what we had was something really different. For the first time, we had, actually, for the second time, when we went to a second round. And on the second round of the presidential election, the central left candidate, which is Antonio José Seguro that you mentioned, was opposed by the leader of Chega, which is actually the leader of a party of the populist party here in Portugal. So that made the whole difference for the second round of the election and even for the results.
And so for those results, so when we got to the second round, Antonio José Seguro secured, looks like 66%, 2/3 of the votes. And if I understand right, that's the largest numerical tally of votes for a candidate. And so where do we interpret that, that large victory? How can we read between the lines between the socialists, who I also
Yeah.
should mention, the socialists took a beating in the legislatives just 8-9 months ago. Now we have a socialist president-elect with 2/3 of the vote. Is there any way we can look and interpret of those results?
Yeah, to make sure that you got the whole picture, this was the president elected with the most votes in the history of Portugal. And we're talking about the latest the latest record that we had was the founder of Portuguese democracy, Mário Soares, and it was back in 1991. And by that time, Soares was going for a second term. So this is quite different because it's not just a record. It's a record because it's a double record because it gets this number in trying his first mandate as a president. So what we had uh, here on the second round was more like a Republican front against a populist candidate, which is similar to what we've seen in France for the latest elections against Marine Le Pen. Here, the name is André Ventura. He is the leader of Chega, as I've mentioned, and he tried to make this second round about he being the leader of the whole right against the candidate of the socialists, but he could not do that because, as we've seen in some polls that were published ahead of the election, the Portuguese mostly interpreted this as a moderate candidate against a radical candidate, and they backed,
Okay.
of course, the moderate.
So then we could summarize that by not necessarily Seguro's victory is a vote, 2/3 voting for a socialist, but it's 2/3 of the country voting for a moderate versus someone with a more populist approach.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The Seguro got the backing of most of center-right figures here in Portugal, um, even even not from officially from the government. Even the party which is in government, which is center-right, backed António José Seguro in the second round.
What does this mean for politics on the right in Portugal? It seems to be a lot of fragmentation, if for
Yeah.
lack of a better word. Is there some truth to that?
Yeah, the fragmentation comes from 6, 7 years ago when Chega got into the parliament, and also a new liberal party got into the Portuguese parliament. And since then, it gets more and more divisive. So, as we speak, we have not. In the parliament, we have three different fronts, more like with the same size, with the same representation. So, center right, center left with the Socialist Party, and the populist front taken by André Ventura. And what you ask what this means for the center right, and I'm afraid that the answer is it's complicated because the government actually doesn't want to back André Ventura's efforts to get. They want actually to block it, efforts to lead the whole opposition against the government, but they're kind of afraid of letting the whole opposition to André Ventura. So it's not easy to answer.
So the center right has to walk a fine line now with both Chega on the right, and now we have a president from the socialist center left. So it's going to be interesting to watch. Now, that being said, what type of president do we expect António José Seguro to be? Does he have a platform or an approach that we expect him to take on?
Well, one of the most interesting things about the new president is that he actually is from the right part of the Socialist Party. So he even was asked in one of the many interviews that he gave before ahead of the elections, if he would define himself as a socialist, and he kind of tried not to answer the question, and everyone was asking why. So, of course, he corrected that. He was actually a leader of the Socialist Party 10 years ago.
Correct. Yeah.
And he went away. He was really a part of politics from the latest 10 years and got back right now. But he took advantage of this position as a centrist. We
Right.
may say that. So that is his platform. He's a moderate. He will try to put some bridges between the two main parties, traditional parties in Portugal. Let's see if he can take a mission.
So our viewers are always interested, and from the Atlantic Council and the Europe Center, on the health and improving transatlantic relations. Portugal and the United States have a long history of strong relations between the two, with an ocean that binds us together. Do you see any big changes in the approach to either transatlantic relations or bilateral relations writ large?
Well, I may say that if there will be any change, it will be mostly because of the US and not because of Portugal. I mean, probably I have no doubt that the new president is an Atlanticist. He is really the alliance is not at stake at any
No.
terms. Not
Okay.
even with the government. We have a center right government. They just appointed to the main foundation that bridges the two sides of the Atlantic, the ex prime minister and ex president of the European Commission, Durão Barroso. So they are
This is
really
this is FLAD, right?
yes, that's his flag.
Yes.
That is a major statement on reaffirming the alliance as we can. So, once again, if there will be any difficult issues between the two sides of the Atlantic, I'm sure that it will not be it will not have a starting point for Portugal.
Great. We don't have much time. I want to close one question here. So, um, the current president, Marcelo Rebelo de Souza, is finishing his second 5-year term, and like most of the other Portuguese presidents, two 5-year terms or a full 10 years. What it's early, but what will be the legacy of President Rebelo de Souza?
Well, in a few words, I would choose one firmly, which would be empathy. The President Marcelo is actually right now we've had been through a terrible storm in the latest 2 weeks, and the
Yes,
president
our
has been
condolences. Yep.
yeah, thank you. He has been on the field since the start of the storm, talking to everyone. There is a magnificent photo in one of the daily newspapers here in Portugal today. He is kissing the hand of an older lady, that is him. That's really authentic. And
I
the other thing,
that's
yeah,
Go ahead. No, please finish.
just finishing, I think that that will be another thing. I think Marcelo will be actually missed in Portugal. He is really an intelligent person, plenty full of history from the start of the European of Portuguese democracy. But his legacy will be mostly the first term when he backed the center left government party's government with the left wing parties, and that was really absolutely new in Portuguese democracy. We called it geringonça, which
Yeah.
is
Yes.
something as similar as a strange machine
Sheen. Yeah.
connecting things that actually don't match, but that support was actually really important because Portugal was leaving the IMF Commission European Commission program for financial assistance, and that stability for the first 4 or 5 years in Portugal was actually decisive.
Yeah, stability and empathy, those are great words. I was living in Portugal during the pandemic, and so I saw his approach during that time. And one of my biggest failures was never to get a selfie with
With
President
President,
Rebelo de Souza, Marcelfie. I came
one
close a
of the
couple
few.
times.
You
Yes.
were one of the few that didn't get
Yeah,
that.
I just been so David, unfortunately we're out of time, but this has been very enlightening and beneficial to our viewers. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much
Thank you so much.
for
It
this.
was a
We are
pleasure.
going to continue to follow what's happening there in Portugal and the rest of Europe, and to our viewers, I do hope that you continue to follow the programming of the Atlantic Council and the Europe Center as we move forward. So thank you very
I
much,
will.
and have a
Thank you.
great day.
Thank you, Andy.